Place your hands behind your back, forward. Alright, under arrest.
The world feels as though it has stopped breathing, frozen in shock and dread as news spreads that King Harris, son of legendary rapper T.I. and reality television star Tiny, is battling for his life inside the ICU. The atmosphere in that cold and sterile hospital room is suffocating, machines surrounding him like fragile lifelines, each beep echoing with desperation, each pause threatening to break the fragile hope clutched by his family. His body lies motionless, wires and tubes invading him, as if fighting death itself on his behalf. Doctors have spoken the words no parent should ever hear. His life is hanging by the thinnest thread imaginable. The brain, they say, was deprived of oxygen for several minutes, enough to leave them terrified that he may never wake again. That even if he does survive, the boy the world once knew may already be gone. The nightmare grows more sinister with each revelation. Leaked medical documents whisper horrors that are hard to fathom. His body is marked not only by bruises, but by burns and chemical traces, injuries that do not look like the aftermath of a simple altercation. Instead, they bear the unmistakable signature of torture. As if that were not enough, a chilling video clip has emerged, grainy but unmistakable, showing two masked intruders slipping into the ICU under the cover of night. They tampered with his life support machines, their movements deliberate and quick, before vanishing back into the shadows. If that footage is real, then the very place meant to preserve his life has become a trap, raising a question that burns through every mind. Who could possibly want this young man dead so badly that even a hospital offers no sanctuary? The anguish of his family has spilled into public view. Tiny has been seen collapsing in hospital corridors, her screams echoing like a mother's primal cry, demanding to know why her son is being killed and who could be behind such cruelty. Ty, pale and trembling, told reporters with a voice on the edge of breaking that this is not merely about his son's suffering, it is about silencing his family. He insists that someone powerful is pulling strings, orchestrating attacks that extend beyond the walls of a prison and into the halls of a hospital. His words have ignited fears that this is no random tragedy, but a calculated act against him, a vendetta carried out through his child. Outside, the world is watching. On social media, #PrayForKing has erupted into a global chorus of grief, outrage, and suspicion. Millions are posting prayers, lighting virtual candles, and demanding justice, but beneath those prayers runs a current of darker speculation. Whispers spread that this may tie back to enemies from T.I. past, individuals or institutions powerful enough to orchestrate torture in prison, sabotage in a hospital, and still remain unseen. Some say this is payback, others mutter of conspiracies reaching into politics or the entertainment industry. The air online is heavy with grief, but also with suspicion that King's suffering is part of something much larger, something designed to break the Harris family entirely. Meanwhile, inside the ICU, time moves differently. Each minute stretches like an hour as machines hum with grim rhythm. King is no longer the vibrant, outspoken 19-year-old who once filled Instagram Live with laughter and rebellion. He now lies still, silent, suspended between life and death. Doctors have issued their most brutal warning. The next 12 hours will decide whether he lives or whether the story of King Harris comes to its end. The leaked reports deepen the horror. Details buried in his medical file suggest injuries that go beyond bruises. Burns appear to match electric shocks. Puncture marks hint at injections he did not consent to. And toxic substances in his blood point to deliberate poisoning. This was no accident, no random fight gone wrong. It was methodical, calculated, a carefully crafted attempt to destroy him. Tiny's grief has become unbearable. She has collapsed on hospital floors, screaming that someone is killing her baby. Those images, captured and shared, have flooded the internet, fueling a storm of heartbreak and anger. People are no longer content just to pray. They want answers. T.I.'s own words have rattled the music industry. With a face drained of color and voice trembling but determined, he stood before cameras and declared this is no longer just about his son's illness. It is a war against his family. Someone powerful, he said, wants them silenced, and King was made the target. The declaration sent shockwaves through the industry and beyond, as people began speculating about which enemies might be behind such cruelty. And just when it seemed the story could not possibly darken further, the CCTV footage spread online. It shows two masked figures moving with purpose inside the ICU, tampering with wires connected to King's fragile body before vanishing like phantoms. Hospital officials have refused to comment, but the implications are terrifying. If authentic, it means King is not safe even within the guarded walls of the ICU, and the forces against him are willing to cross every boundary. Outside, the hospital has become a gathering place for grief. Fans stand in candlelight vigils, strangers weep in the streets, and churches hold late night prayers for his survival. Rap fans flood TikTok with clips of his past, desperate to keep his memory alive, desperate to believe there is still a future for him. Yet the tension inside remains crushing. A leaked voice note from a nurse whispered a devastating truth. The doctors do not expect him to recover fully. His brain may already be damaged beyond repair. That single revelation broke millions of hearts, spreading across the internet like a cold wave of dread. The picture grows darker still with each leak and whisper. A prison guard claims orders came from above, that the attack was not random but planned, that King was never meant to leave prison alive. The words echo with menace. Somebody powerful gave the order. The world now asks who that somebody is and how high their reach extends. Tiny's voice, breaking with grief, has carried across social media as she insists her son is innocent, that he did not deserve this, and that whoever is responsible will face divine justice. Her pain has become the pain of millions, a mother's raw cry amplified across the globe. Now the hours crawl forward, each second threatening to bring the news the family fears most. The heart monitor beeps on, fragile and haunting. Doctors warn the coming hours may decide everything. The Harris family clings desperately to hope, while millions refresh their screens in unison, praying they will not see the unthinkable headline. The fate of King Harris has become not just a private struggle, but a global vigil, and the world waits, holding its breath. Midnight fell heavy over Atlanta's most guarded ICU, where silence wrapped itself around the corridors like a suffocating shroud. Outside, hundreds of fans gathered with candles and posters, chanting King's name into the night, their voices rising like desperate prayers begging the heavens for a miracle. Inside, however, the reality was colder, sharper, and far more terrifying than anyone outside could imagine. Doctors delivered news that froze hope in its tracks. King Harris's brain had been starved of oxygen longer than they initially believed. The scans told a story that no family wanted to hear: irregular activity, red flags of permanent damage, and the growing possibility that the vibrant boy who once filled rooms with laughter and rebellious energy might never return. In a leaked voice note, one surgeon admitted in a whisper, if he survives, he may not be the same boy. We are terrified of brain damage. That confession, though never intended for the public, spread like wildfire and shattered Tiny beyond repair. Witnesses describe the heart-wrenching moment she collapsed on the sterile hospital floor, clutching her chest as though her own heart had cracked under the weight of the news. Her sobs echoed through the corridor as she screamed, "He's still my baby. Don't you dare say he's gone." The scene, recorded in secret, reached millions online, where it was shared alongside hashtags demanding prayers, justice, and truth. The world grieved with her, not just for the life hanging in balance, but for the raw image of a mother broken in front of them all. Yet the grief had only just begun. Another leak surfaced online, a hospital report so chilling that even those already numb from shock felt their hearts sink deeper. The file did not merely detail trauma from a fight. It pointed to chemical substances in King's bloodstream, compounds linked to experimental torture techniques. This was not a random beating, nor the chaotic aftermath of a prison brawl. This was science weaponized, a systematic destruction from the inside out. The question that spread through every feed was simple but terrifying. Who had access to such methods? Was this orchestrated by enemies from TI, past in the music industry? Or was the truth buried deeper, tied to figures with far greater power and reach? The speculation spiraled out of control after another leak hit Twitter, a grainy audio recording allegedly capturing a hushed conversation between prison officials. One voice whispered with unease, "We cleared the block. We made it easy, but it wasn't supposed to reach this level. Orders came from way above." That single phrase, "way above," ignited a wildfire of conspiracy theories. Was above a reference to powerful executives, a government agency, or an unseen hand higher than both? Theories swirled endlessly, each darker than the last, leaving the world questioning how deep this nightmare went and who truly stood behind it. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Security was suddenly tightened to levels that resembled a military operation. Guards were posted at every door, staff members questioned repeatedly, and access to the ICU became restricted to only the closest family. But whispers inside the corridors suggested that the family's trust in the hospital had already been shattered. An insider claimed Tiny accused staff of being paid to look the other way, fueling suspicions that even within the hospital walls, betrayal lurked in silence. Fans online speculated endlessly. King's biggest threat was no longer just his injuries, but the possibility of another inside attack. The heartbreak spread wider when T.I. emerged before cameras, his face pale and exhausted, his voice trembling with grief and rage. Standing before the flashing lights of reporters, he declared with defiance, "This isn't a medical fight anymore. It's a fight for justice. My son is the victim of a calculated hit. Somebody wants him gone, but hear me now. We will not be silenced. I don't care how powerful you are." His voice cracked, then rose into a roar that shook with fury, and the video of that moment became the most shared clip of the night. Millions watched as a father transformed his pain into rage, vowing not to bow to the shadowy forces striking at his family. But the internet was not united. While countless fans drowned timelines with candle emojis, prayers, and words of love, others grew cruel. Some labeled the ordeal karma, pointing to T.I. past scandals and claiming this was retribution. Others mocked the family with merciless words, writing comments like, "What goes around comes around." The divide was brutal, with one half of the world crying for mercy and the other casting blame. The Harris family was not only battling death itself, but also judgment from strangers watching through screens. Then came the darkest twist yet. Anonymous hackers released what they claimed was prison CCTV footage showing King being dragged into a dimly lit room, beaten mercilessly, strapped down, and injected with unknown substances. Though its authenticity remained unverified, the footage spread worldwide within hours. Viewers described it as unwatchable, graphic, horrifying, the kind of imagery that seared itself into the mind. Yet millions clicked anyway, unable to turn away from the horror. For Tiny, even hearing about the footage was unbearable. She reportedly screamed through tears. "They tortured him like an animal. My son is not a criminal, he's a child. Why would they do this to him?" Her grief transformed into a universal grief. her words echoing in the hearts of strangers across the world who saw their own children in her pain. As the night wore on, the hospital's exterior transformed into a sight of collective mourning. The crowd outside swelled into the thousands, people kneeling on sidewalks, crying openly, praying fervently, and chanting King's name into the darkness. Churches rang bells through the night, rap fans blasted his old videos in cars and on TikTok, and the city of Atlanta seemed to stand on the precipice of mourning, suspended between prayer and despair. Inside the ICU, however, the truth was even more chilling. Doctors whispered among themselves, blunt in their warnings. If King made it through the night, it would be nothing short of divine intervention. Hope flickered and dimmed with each passing hour, yet the Harris family clung to it with desperate strength. T.I. dropped to his knees beside his son's bed, gripping King's hand tightly as if sheer force of will could keep him alive. He whispered through tears, "Son, fight. You got to fight. Don't let them win." That intimate moment, unseen by the public, carried the weight of an entire family's hope. The night stretched on endlessly, filled with candlelight vigils outside and quiet despair within. Doctors, family, and fans alike waited in agony, staring down the unrelenting truth. The fight was not just for King's survival anymore. It was against shadows too powerful to name, against enemies who seemed to strike from every direction. Yet still, the boy's heartbeat lingered on the monitor, fragile but present, a single thread keeping millions from collapse. The hospital clock ticked past 3 in the morning, and though the world outside slept, inside Atlanta's ICU, the fight for King Harris's life raged on. Every passing second stretched into eternity as the steady beeps of the heart monitor echoed like a haunting countdown. Doctors worked tirelessly around his fragile body, their whispers urgent, their movements swift, but the machines did most of the work to keep his chest rising and falling. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the heavy silence, a flatline scream. For 45 excruciating seconds, King's heart had stopped. Nurses rushed in, pounding against his chest, forcing life back into veins that seemed ready to surrender. A nation held its breath in those eternal moments until finally, weak and uneven, the rhythm returned. "We are running out of time," a doctor muttered under his breath. Tiny's scream carried down the corridor, raw and uncontainable. "Don't you dare give up on my son." She threw herself against the ICU doors, begging, clawing to be let in. A fan captured the heartbreaking scene on a phone, and within hours the clip went viral on TikTok. Millions watching a mother's fight against death itself and against a system many now believed wanted her son gone. But the nightmare spiraled darker still. A toxicology report leaked onto the internet, revealing traces of a rare chemical identified as K-47, a substance allegedly tied to covert military interrogations. The findings suggested King had been poisoned even before the brutal beating began. This revelation flipped the narrative upside down. It was no longer simply an attack or even a case of torture. It was premeditated, calculated destruction, orchestrated with chilling precision. Online theories erupted. Was this the work of prison gangs, corrupt officials, or a higher-level conspiracy designed to break T.I. by destroying his son? Hashtags shifted from #pray for King to #who ordered this, as the story stopped being just about survival and began to unravel into a desperate search for the shadowy figures pulling strings behind the curtain. Outside, the city of Atlanta erupted. Protesters stormed the hospital gates, demanding answers, chanting, "We want justice," into the night. Police lined the streets, their flashing lights cutting through the dark as clashes with the crowd broke out. Atlanta became a city of grief and fury, fire and tears colliding in the streets. Inside, amid the chaos, King's body twitched on the hospital bed. For a fleeting moment, brain activity spiked, and hope flared in the room. Doctors warned it could simply be a dying spark, not a sign of recovery, but his family refused to let go of that fragile glimmer. T.I. fell to his knees at his son's side, clutching King's hand tightly, whispering through sobs, "Son, fight." You got to fight. Don't let them win. Cameras outside later captured T.I. breaking down in Tiny's arms, his face crumbling into grief the world had never seen from him before. Then came yet another chilling leak, this time CCTV footage from inside the hospital itself. The grainy video appeared to show two masked men sneaking into the ICU, moving stealthily toward the machines sustaining King's life. They fiddled with wires before slipping back into the shadows, vanishing without a trace. Security dismissed the footage as fake, but millions had already watched it spread across social media. If authentic, it meant King wasn't safe even in the place that should have been protecting him most. Tweets poured out in disbelief. This isn't just a tragedy, it's an assassination in slow motion. Fear spread that the forces targeting King were relentless, willing to infiltrate the hospital to finish what they had started. Whispers inside the hospital added another layer of terror. A nurse claimed she overheard two administrators arguing quietly, "We can't protect him if the order comes again. This family doesn't know who they're up against." The implication was chilling, that even the hospital itself might be powerless against the unseen forces closing in. The Harris family wasn't just fighting against death. They were fighting against betrayal, against an enemy so powerful it could reach into both prison and hospital walls without consequence. The world watched with divided hearts. On one side, timelines flooded with prayers, candles, and pleas for mercy. On the other, cruel voices declared it karma, sneering that T.I. past had finally caught up to him. The Harris family was drowning not only in grief, but in judgment cast by strangers from behind screens, the cruelty of public opinion piling on top of their agony. Yet T.I. remained defiant. Standing outside the hospital once more, his eyes red and voice breaking, he spoke with rage and conviction. "If my son dies, his blood is not only on the hands of the men who touched him, but on every powerful name that gave the order. And I promise you, their day will come." His voice grew louder, roaring through the cameras as the crowd behind him chanted justice for King. The night felt apocalyptic, protesters crying, police clashing, social media exploding, the world bearing witness to a family torn apart in real time. As the sun threatened to rise, the nightmare showed no sign of ending. Just before noon, alarms wailed once more from inside the ICU. King's vitals plummeted, sending staff racing, shouting commands and pushing the family back. Panic consumed the halls as Tiny fainted in the corridor, her body giving way to the weight of dread while T.I. slammed his fist into the wall, screaming with helpless fury. For 3 endless minutes, no word emerged. When a doctor finally appeared, his face pale and drenched in sweat, his words offered no comfort. "We don't know if he's going to make it through the day." The uncertainty tore through the waiting world, leaving millions trembling at their screens. Now the story had reached its cruelest point. King Harris, once known for his laughter, his boldness, his dreams, now lay in a hospital bed clinging to life by the thinnest thread. His family, shattered beyond recognition, stood on the edge of unthinkable loss. T.I. drowned in regret, Tiny prayed through tears, and his siblings begged God for mercy. This was no longer just a health crisis, but a tragedy exposing the cracks in fame, trust, and power. Whispers of manipulation, rumors of betrayal, and shocking leaks pointing fingers in every direction left fans speechless. How had it come to this? How could a young man become the target of forces so dark and determined? And now, as the doctors warned that the next few hours could decide everything, the world holds its breath alongside the Harris family. Strangers cry in streets, churches hold vigils, and millions refresh their screens in silent prayer. King's life hangs by a heartbeat, fragile and uncertain. Whether he survives or not, his story has already become more than a headline. It is a cry for hope in a world that feels darker with every revelation. Tonight, as candles burn and voices rise in prayer, the only question left is whether King Harris will return to the boy the world once knew, or if he has already been lost forever.